looking back at what we saw, let's just first talk a little bit about the evidence that we had for the first focus area, which is the checking for understanding. And yeah.
So does the teacher have check? I put yes, but I didn't put the evidence. She did have a lot of questioning of students, and they asked her questions, and she was able to give them feedback and assistance. I'm trying to think what else is there, and I guess in the explanation for the assignment that was given with the students in regards to the stations that they were situated in.
There was a timer, and when the timer went off, she checked in with the whole class with how they were doing and where they were at, and if that, if they were okay at that point. I also saw her go around and individually check in with students and have individual conversations with each student. And each station had some type of graphic organizer or something for students to show what they were working on, which is, I guess, in my opinion, another way of checking for understanding.
She also asked, one thing is when she did check with them with the time limit, she was like, there's about 5 minutes left. Is that a reasonable amount of time for you to finish? And they were like, no. And so she said, okay, well, I'll check back as it gets closer to 0. And she ended up extending the time for some, and she said, but if you're done, move on to a new station. So she differentiated based off of their needs. So she took their feedback and used it.
How about the alignment of the driving question to the task? What did we see there?
I saw one of the stations, she had the language of Shakespeare, and it was their phrases, and then they had to translate it to phrases that are used today. So she was showing, it was a compare and contrast, where they had to do, look at that. She also had, all of the different ones. She had an intro to Shakespeare, the works of Shakespeare, the world of Shakespeare, the history of Shakespeare, the theater of Shakespeare. She had literary devices, so she took all the different pieces of what makes Shakespeare Shakespeare, and they had to read and take notes and learn about it, so that they can answer.
I got the feeling, I guess the takeaway is that these are scaffolding activities, so they haven't quite gotten to the work of how is it relevant today necessarily in all the stations, but every station was related to Shakespeare, which is the driving question, and related to her standards for ELA.
How about depth of knowledge? And we may have to spend some time talking about the various stations because there were multiple things going on, but what do we think about the task? And feel free to refer if you need to.
I just wrote down general verbs, key verbs from the DOK chart, and I pulled out level 1 and level 2 readily.
Okay, what are some of the examples we have? I heard Monica say a couple.
Summarize, quote, give examples, define, determine, extend, and organize.
Did anybody see any 3s? Or is there any evidence? I guess I should say that. Is there any evidence that we saw any level 3 or 4?
Site evidence.
I think the one in which they had to take the phrase then and make the phrase today, it wasn't just, they had to, because it wasn't just, they had to interpret or infer what that phrase meant in Old English and then filling in what it means in ours. So it wasn't something that there wasn't anywhere they could just find it and give the answer. They had to infer what it meant.
Okay. And then how about the task being aligned to her standard? We talked about the driving question. Did anybody write down the standard?
One of the standards, the RI 910.2, analyze informational text development. And then the point B is provide an objective summary of the text that includes the development of the central idea and how details impact this idea. So that's the first standard. And then the second one is the integration of knowledge and ideas, 910.7. Analyze various accounts of a subject told in different mediums. Example, a person's life story in both print and multimedia, determining which details are emphasized in each account.
Okay.
And that's exactly what they were doing.
All right, well, let's take a minute and put down our next steps for the teacher, and then we can put our evidence into the portal.
Okay.
Thanks.